All right, what's up, everybody? Emily Duplessis here, coming back at you on day 2 of our 5-day challenge. I'm excited to be back with you tonight. I'm in here. It is 8:30 on the dot. Hopefully we will start off without having any kind of technical difficulties like we did last night. So let me know if you are here with me live, if you can hear me, if you can see my screen. I actually have it also pulled up on my laptop so I can make sure that the slides and everything are working, but just let me know, please, if you can hear me before I get started. That helps me know, because I have my laptop on mute. That way I don't hear myself echoing. So again, like I said, excited to be here with you in our challenge day 2. Hopefully you got the emails today. I know there was a bit of a change in the timing tonight. So I know in some of the emails it said tonight's training was at 8 and another it's at 8:30. So wanted to, I sent an email a couple hours ago just letting you know that the time would actually be 8:30 because we had a commitment and actually didn't walk in the door until about 8 o'clock or shortly after. So I had to push that back tonight. But I'm excited to be here. We had a good training last night. Tons of great questions have been coming in last night during the training, and I also had a lot of questions come in today that I was in the group and answering. So if you haven't had a chance to check out last night's training, make sure that you do that. We spent a lot of time talking about investing lingo. It's probably going to be last night was probably one of the longer trainings. Tonight and tomorrow won't tend to be as long. And then when we actually analyze the property, that'll probably be a little bit of a longer one. So tonight and tomorrow should be a little bit shorter, a little bit sweeter, because we're just going to kind of pound right through and hit the high notes of the things that you need to know. So in today's training, we are going to be talking about listings and talking about what to look for in listings, what questions you should be asking, what documents you should be asking for, because again, this is just all part of that process of analyzing potential rentals. These are the things that you need to know. You need to know the terms that are going to be showing up on an analyzer, or the terms that you're going to be needing to ask agents about when it comes to, or sellers about when it comes to the properties. You need to know how to go about looking at a listing, what you should actually be looking for in a listing. So that's super important as well. Again, tomorrow night we're going to be talking about return on investment, which is also critical when it comes to analyzing deals. So again, the whole point of this challenge is to break down things and kind of hyper focus on various elements of analyzing rental property. So our training goals for tonight. So while it will be a bit of a shorter training tonight, we do have 3 different things that I'm going to be covering throughout this training. The first goal that I have is to allow you to find the need to know numbers on a listing to run an analysis. So I actually have some listings pulled up that I'm going to hear about midway through the slide deck. I'm going to kind of click over to some listings and actually go through some listings with you. I'm also going to be going over what documents you should be asking for and that you can ask for from either a listing agent or a seller. And also goals are to find important information that on a listing can help you see whether a seller may be motivated or not. So there's some information, some tips and tricks that I'm going to give you on that. So I'm going to go ahead and jump right in. Don't forget, if you have not downloaded the workbook for the entire challenge, head on over to rentalrookie.com/challenge workbook. You'll have direct access to it. So make sure that you grab that because there are daily activities that I'm having you do. Those of you who were on the training last night know that there was a short 10-question quiz that I wanted you to do just to recap what we covered. I will have the activity for tonight is a little bit of a scavenger hunt. So you're going to want to grab that to make sure that you're ready and able to, again, get those quick wins that you need to help propel your investing journey. So last night we talked about a number of terms related to kind of talking the talk as an investor. I dove into 10 different terms last night in the training. There are 17 total terms in the actual workbook that I talk about and show you, but last night we jumped into 10 different terms. And so if you want, again, to review that, you can check the training out in the Facebook group, or you can also head over to rentalrookie.com/access. This is only for challenge members, and it's basically an all-access pass to everything challenge related. So you'll find on that page, you'll have access to the training recordings. You'll also have access to the downloads, the workbook, and I will also be including in there the PDF version of the slide decks that I use on the nights that I use a slide training. And I'm also going to be throwing in some extras that will be added just because you're here working hard in this challenge. So definitely head on over to rentalrookie.com/access, and you'll be able, as the week goes on, every day I'm going to be adding more stuff to it. So you're going to want to check that out as well. All right, let's go ahead and jump in. Part 1, what to look for on a listing. That's the first thing that we are going to be talking about tonight. So there are a number of things that you need to look for on a listing that ultimately give you a general feel for the property. So, you want to look at the listing as a whole, and every element of a listing is going to give you a little bit more of information, right? The pictures are going to give you some insight into the property. Obviously, the numbers that are listed on the listing are going to give you insight. The description that the seller or the listing agent writes is going to give you some insight. So there are a lot of different components of a listing, and they all are very important, and you're going to want to pay attention to each of those. Now, my disclaimer here is that I'm going to tell you straight up that you will find, there's no doubt about this, listings that have barely enough information to run any kind of proper analysis. It happens time and time again for us as well. When you're out and you're looking for listings, you are ultimately going to find listings that barely have any information. Maybe they don't have any pictures. Maybe, it's a multi-unit, but it says nothing about the rent that it's, bringing in right now. So that is going to happen. So just know that ahead of time. Know that whenever you start looking, that will happen. It's inevitable. When it does happen, the truth of the matter is you're going to have to do a little bit more work. So you're going to have to do a little bit more digging. You're going to have to do a little bit of more research on the property. So what does that look like, right? So when this happens to me and I, see that a property is listed and I go and I try to check out the listings, whether it's, on realtor.com or on a local real estate agency website, and I find that there's just not a lot of information, this is what I do. So for instance, I will go and I will look at a variety of different listing sites, because sometimes you'll find that there's different information, or more or potentially less sometimes, information on other listing sites. So let's say that I started at realtor.com and I found something I was interested in, but I wasn't happy with the information that was listed there, that I might head over to Zillow, or I might head over to Redfin, or I might go to one of the local real estate agent websites, like real estate office websites in our town, and I'll look through there and see maybe if they have some better information. So I will spend a little bit of time looking at anywhere from probably 3 to 5 other websites, and all the same property, right? But just to see the variations of the listings on those different sites so that I can pull more information in. So that's one kind of solution to the problem whenever you run into, a listing not having a lot of information. It's not like, oh crap, I'm done. Okay, I'm not going to do any work. It just requires you as the investor to do a little bit more digging. Another thing that I'll do is I will call the listing agent directly and ask my questions. So yes, we have, real estate agents that we work with that, represent us as buyers. But sometimes, I don't want to go through the hassle of having to call that and then wait for them to call the listing agent and then have them get back and da-da-da-da-da. Sometimes, it's just a whole lot easier for me to call the listing agent directly. And I'll do that sometimes. And I'll ask my questions, and I will go over some of those questions here in a little bit, but I will ask them and I will get direct answers, because I don't want to have to wait a day or 2 or 3 to get the information, especially if it's a good deal, especially if it could be in a competitive market. You want to get your questions answered as soon as possible so that you can run numbers and know if this is a property that you want to go over. Thing that I'll do is, if it doesn't have a lot of information in terms of the rental incomes that it is pulling in, or if it's a single family property that we are going to turn into a rental, so it's not collecting rent at the moment, I'll spend a little bit of time researching other comparable properties for not only sale price, but also rent. So if we're looking at, a 2-bedroom, 2-bath condo that was, a owner-occupant property that I'm going to buy as an investment, then I'm going to go do a little bit of digging to find out, what are other properties like this renting for, so that I know whenever I run my analysis what I can expect in terms of rent. So those are kind of the troubleshooting things whenever this happens to you, because again, it will happen. So let's jump into what actual numbers you are going to be looking for on a listing. So like I said, we have the pictures and the descriptions, which I'm going to talk about here in a little bit, but then there's the hard numbers that you're going to want when it comes to actually running the numbers on the property. So that's obviously the sale price. What is it, or the list price, sale price, what is it listed at? And then what you actually might offer on it. So if you have a pretty good pulse on your market, you might know, you might see a property listed for $80,000, but know, I think it might be a bit overpriced based off of the information that I'm given on the listing. So my target offer price would maybe be like 73 or 74, right? And that's what you could then use in your property analysis. You're also going to want to look for taxes. Do they list the taxes on the listing? Sometimes you will find on listings, if it was a previous rental, that they might give you the estimated insurance. So what the previous landlord was paying in insurance. It doesn't happen all the time. I will say that, but sometimes it will be listed there. Current rental income. If it's a multi-unit, sometimes that's listed. If it's not, if it's a single family that wasn't a rental, then you might have to do a little bit of digging on that. Expenses, meaning utilities. So if the current landlord is paying utilities, sometimes it will say on their, gross expenses for the landlord, and that's another number that you want to look for because these all play into your analysis. If there is an HOA or condo fee, so this can relate to condos, townhouses, even single family homes that are in a neighborhood or community, that also is going to play into your overall analysis of the property. So you're going to want to know what those fees are, any kind of maintenance fees, and you're also going to want to look at pictures, which I will talk about here in a minute. So those are kind of the hard main numbers that you, in most cases, may see on a listing. Like I said, you're not ever going to find all of these things listed on a listing. I don't know if I've ever found that. I don't think I have. But if you did, maybe you hit the lottery in terms of a listing. But these are the numbers that you want to look for when it comes to, looking at a listing and knowing what numbers you need to know for running a proper analysis. Other numbers that you're going to need to know, though, when it comes to actually running the analysis, right? You're going to want to know kind of what your financing strategy is going to be. So if you're going to be using any kind of finance or leverage, what kind of down payment you're looking at, the vacancy rate. We talked about the vacancy rate last night in last night's training. So if you didn't watch that, you're going to want to check into that. What the kind of the going interest rate is right now. If you're going to have to do any kind of renovations, which again, that will come from pictures, which I'll talk about here shortly. And then any kind of CapEx savings. So if you're going to be, again, CapEx standing for capital expenditures, we talked about those on last night's training. So again, check that training if you're not sure what that is. But you're also going to want to account for those. So those are kind of all the numbers that you're going to need when it comes to running the analysis. And you're going to see Thursday night when we do our when we do our training, I will be, showing you where all of these go in the property analyzer, and how they kind of all play together, work together to give you what your return on investment will be and what your cash flow will be. So let's actually take a minute and look at some listings. So I'm going to pull out of my slide deck and I'm going to I'm going to kind of watch on my laptop and make sure that this is kind of switching over as well. I know that on my laptop there's a little bit of a delayed response, but I want to look at some listings and just kind of generally go over kind of how I look at a listing, what I think about when I look at a listing. I'm going to go through this again in more detail on Thursday night when we do the actual running through a property analysis. But because we're talking about, what to look for on a listing tonight, I definitely want to go over what that looks like. So, let me know in the comment section, let me know if you can see the listing, because I don't want to be talking and you not be able to see it. All right, so let me know if you can see that, because for whatever reason on my laptop, I'm trying to kind of follow along on my laptop to make sure everything's working well for all of you. But for whatever reason, it's kind of delayed. So I want to make sure that you can see that. All right, so we're going to look at 2 listings. I pulled up a listing from general, just kind of realtor.com. So those of you out there that peruse some of the listing sites that are out there, this is one of them. I'd love to know in the comment section, those of you who are here with me live, or even if you're watching this later, what sites do you use to find properties? Because I always pick up a new one when I talk to people in the community. So what do you use typically? Are you realtor.com? Do you use Zillow? Do you have an agent who sends you properties? You know, what does it look like for you? So in the comment section, let me know where you find, and where's like your typical go-to spot for finding listings. But we're going to go ahead and take a look at this. So I pulled up a multi-unit that is actually in the town where Kirk and I live. We've actually gone to look at this property. So I thought that would give you some good insight that I can kind of tell you from like the listing versus actually going and looking at the property. I'm going to grab a drink of water real quick. Like I said, I get out of breath a lot now that I'm pregnant. 9 months pregnant, mind you. But all right, so this is a 4-unit. It's located just a little bit outside of town. And so when as I'm going about this and I'm looking at the listing, right, obviously there's a lot of pictures. So when you're looking at a listing, pictures are critical. I mean, if you have a lot of pictures that are listed there, that's going to be super important to give you insight into the quality of the property and the importance of the property. It's going to allow you to see whether or not you need, I got a child breaking into the room. That's what happens when you go live. Little Annie, our little 2-year-old, just broke in. But anyways, as she screams as she goes away. Anyways, you can see here that there are a lot of pictures. I always get excited when there's a lot of pictures because I know that that's going to give me some insight into the inside of the property. So if I quickly scroll through, pictures are not of the best quality, which always makes me go, that always makes me a little bit iffy. But I'll just kind of quickly scroll through. Obviously, you can see that there's a lot of stuff in the property, which makes me think it's probably pretty small. There isn't a lot of storage space. Obviously, these people have to have a lot of their stuff out. Overall, kitchen's not too bad. I mean, it's older cabinets, older countertops, but overall, it's not dilapidated or falling apart in any sense. You can kind of see, you get the flow of it. You walk in the front door, most likely is the little living area. I bet when you walk in here, it comes back to the kitchen. So you can get a general feel for the property just by looking at the picture. So again, overall, property doesn't look bad. It looks a little bit old. Maybe eventually you would want to update it a little bit. But overall, it looks like there's probably a lack of storage space, and that's why there's stuff everywhere. Windows, as I would look through, I'm going to look at things like windows, pictures, and pay attention to some of those more important things, right? Obviously, laundry is included. That's a huge perk. I'm taking a look at some of the utility stuff. Those are things as an investor you want to look at because those are the expensive things. You want to look past the paint and the carpet because those are easy, generally speaking, cheap fixes. You want to pay attention to the more expensive things, the CapEx things, right? So pretty sweet that they actually put a picture of this in here. You won't find this often, honestly, on listings. You're not going to see pictures of the electrical panels and those sorts of things, the hot water tank. So that is actually this listing in terms of pictures. I give it a pretty good rating, a pretty good grade because they include a lot of stuff. You can see they even include pictures of the lease, which I actually have never seen before when it comes to listings. But again, this just gives you more information. So I scroll down. The descriptions are another way for you to be able to get a lot of information. You might be able to tell from the description how motivated a seller is. Sometimes you can tell that here from a description. But then you're going to want to look for some of that information, right? So as I look down, I'm not necessarily seeing anything here in terms of, it tells me that there is parking. That's going to be something that's important for tenants, potential tenants. But as I scroll down, it gives me the nearby school district, which is good. But I'm looking for some of those hard numbers and I'm not really seeing them yet, right? So like I'm not seeing taxes anywhere. Here you can see property tax, no property tax history available for this property. You will see here, and you're going to see this often, where they kind of do the payment calculator where they just throw in information. So if I look here and I see, okay, they have $355 a month for taxes. So if I pull up, I'm going to pull up my calculator real quick and take a look at what that is. So if I take 355 times 12, we're looking at $4,260 for taxes, right? Based off of this. Now, I will tell you, I have the listing from the agent in my hand right now because we went and viewed this property. And the taxes are listed at $4,870 is what they actually were. So there was about a $600-ish difference. And guys, that adds up. So, you can't always take the information that's on here as valid information. And I'm going to talk about that here in a little bit because you don't know, like, especially with these sorts of things, that's maybe just an average or an estimate for the area and not actually for that property. So that's a big tip that I have for you when it comes to the listings. Is, you might not want to, you can use the information to kind of start, but you're going to want to verify everything. And I'll talk about that as well. It didn't list the rental incomes anywhere. However, it did have pictures of the leases. So you would be able to kind of verify the rents that were coming in here. The other thing that I'll mention that when I'm looking at a listing that helps me decide how motivated the seller might be is how many days it's been listed. So you can see here on realtor.com, it's been listed 187 days. When I see big numbers like that, that immediately makes me think, hey, potentially that seller might be motivated, right? There might be some, wiggle room to get a better price, get it below market value. Sometimes though, on the other end, that could just mean that they're stubborn and they really want their list price. But I also know that this has also had a price reduction. So, some of those things, you see a price reduction, you see a lot of days on the market, then you might be able to get some wiggle room in terms of, getting a better deal. So that's the first one that I wanted to look at. And then I actually pulled up another listing from another source. So those of you who are out there that work with agents, your real estate agents can kind of set you up with these automated emails. We get them from one of our agents in Virginia. She knows our price range. She knows she sets up in the system like our price range and all of that. So anytime there's a new property that comes on the market, anytime that there is a price reduction or things like that change with the listing, we get emails, automated emails. So I pulled up this listing because I want to show you a listing that comes from the MLS, right? So this is the MRIS in Virginia, and I want you to see how much more detailed they are versus things like realtor.com or Zillow. Not to knock them because I use them week in and week out, but there's just so much more information whenever you get a listing from an agent. So you can see if you scroll down, obviously there's some pictures. I actually chose this property because we recently just sold a condo in in this complex back in November for $125,000. So this is listed at $129,000. So not too far off what we sold our rental that we had in there. But you can see there's just a lot more information. You got the list price. It's giving you the type of property it is. It goes into a lot of detail here, but some of the things I want you to pay attention to, it tells you the HOA fee. That was one of the things that I said that you want to look for, right? So when you run your numbers, you've got one of the hard numbers that you want to look at, total taxes. You also have that. And typically on the listings that come from the MLS, you're going to have pretty accurate information when it comes to taxes. Not to say you shouldn't still verify, but it's going to be a bit more accurate than I would say what you might find on things like realtor.com. So right there, you've got two of the hard numbers that you need to know right off the bat. Obviously, it gives you specs. It goes in and kind of breaks down the features of the property in a lot more detail, gives you a lot more information about square footage. Descriptions obviously go into a lot more detail. And so then you can scroll down and get some more of the information toward the bottom in terms of assessment, improvements. So you can see that, if you're getting a listing from an agent, that's coming from the MLS, it's going to have a bit more of the hard numbers that you need in a rental. So if you don't already have automated emails set up with your agent that you're working with, definitely talk to them about doing that and see if that's an option for you. It saves you time. It saves them time. You don't necessarily have to go out looking all the time. You get these emails automatically sent to you. So that's another little tip as well. All right, I'm going to jump back into this. And we're going to keep moving forward. All right, part 2, we're going to talk about what documents you should be looking for and questions to ask. So at this point, if you have any questions, throw them in the comment section. Again, if you would let me know what sources you use to find listings. I would love to know that as well. I'm going to take a quick drink of water and then we'll jump into part 2. All right, what documents and questions you should be asking. So the biggest thing, I mentioned this last night, that comes to working in this niche of investing in rental property is that you have to trust, but I want you to verify. Listings can have some really good starting info, but if you're serious about a property and you want to pursue it, then you want to verify as many of the numbers as you can on a listing. That's so very important. We've had it happen time and time again where information that was on a listing wasn't actually accurate when we started to do the digging on the property. So I can't stress enough how important it is for you to verify information that you're finding on a listing, information that you're being told by a seller or by a listing agent. Don't feel like you are asking for too much when it comes to asking some of the following questions that I'm going to tell you. And I know you might feel like that because I remember, maybe like a few months ago, I was talking to a newbie investor and we were on the phone chatting and she was asking me about, I'm about to call an agent about a property. It's my first time. What questions should I ask? What should I be aware of? So I started kind of rattling off some of the questions that I'm going to share with you here. And I got about halfway through and she's like, and she stops me and she's like, well, Emily, I can ask that stuff. And I said, of course, like you're putting your money into this. Like you want as much information as possible. And if they truly want to sell it, then they should be fine giving you as much information as possible because they want to sell the property. If they don't want to disclose information, then that to me would be a red flag as an investor. And I would worry about, what are they trying to hide? So you don't feel like you're asking for too much when it comes to asking for documentation to back up what they're saying. So some of the major numbers that I would say you want to verify. Taxes. Definitely verify the numbers on the listing. Again, whether they're listed or not, you should verify that those were the taxes for that current year, not previous years. And so sometimes we'll even get like the actual tax document from sellers that shows us exactly what they paid just to verify what they're telling us. Now, some follow-up questions when it comes to taxes is that you might also want to ask when was the latest tax reassessment and how often they reassess the taxes in the area. So if you live in the area, you might already know because you live there. But if you don't, if it's a different area than where you live and you're just not sure, ask that. Because I can tell you the town that we live in Pennsylvania hadn't had a tax reassessment, I think, in like 40 years. That sounds crazy, but it was like since like 1960 or something like that. And then just a couple of years ago, they went through and they reassessed the entire county, and they didn't do it in a slow, gradual way. They pounded people. I mean, farms went out of business and were sold. I mean, people's taxes doubled, tripled. And so, as an investor, that's a scary thing because that could totally wipe out any kind of profit and cash flow that you're making. So definitely follow up and ask about reassessments, how often that happens, just so you have, good information about that. All right, another number to verify, utility expenses. So you can also ask for actual documentation of utility bills from previous owners, and we have done this as well. You're going to want to also find out follow-up questions. What does the landlord pay versus the tenant? If it's a multi-unit, it might be split, and maybe the landlord only covers things like outdoor maintenance, snow removal, trash, those sort of things. If it's a single family unit, single family property, you could have your tenants. I know in our single family properties, we have our tenants pay all utilities. We don't pay any of them. Some of our multis, things aren't split, so we have to pay some, tenants pay some. So you're going to want to find out who pays those things. If the landlord does pay some of the utilities, ask for utility bills. I can tell you a quick story. We did this once. We were looking at a property, and on the listing, it said that it equaled out that the monthly expenses for utilities were about like between $400 and $500. When we asked for verification, they sent us like a 90-page PDF document. We combed through the entire thing, and it ended up being that the utilities were actually between $800 and $900 a month, which was double what they said they were in the listing. And so had we not gone through and done our homework and actually combed through the details, then we could have totally been, blindsided and lost out on all that profit. So utility expenses are another thing to look for. Also verify current rents. So if the property is a current rental, ask for leases to verify the current rents received. This is also going to allow you to get verification of that property actually being rented and the terms of the lease. So again, this is another thing that you can ask for and see when it comes to kind of looking for properties. So some general follow-up questions also that I would say to ask. These are kind of my general kind of top 3-4 questions that we ask on every property. Why is the seller selling the property, right? What's their purpose? What are they trying to get rid of? Why are they trying to get rid of it? Are they retiring from the business? Did they inherit it? And this will the answer to this will give you an idea of how motivated the seller is, right? If it's like, yeah, there used to be their parents and they passed away and they inherited it and they hate being a landlord, right? They just want rid of it. That gives you an idea that you might be able to play ball and might be able to get it for a decent price below. If they say, oh yeah, they have it, they love it, but something came up and they need to get rid of it, then maybe they will be motivated, maybe they won't. But that question can give you a lot of really good information on the property itself. You can just straight up ask, how motivated are the sellers, right? Find out straight from the listing agent, or have your agent find out, how motivated are they? That's going to give you an idea of potentially where to come in if you decide that you do want to make an offer. Has there been a lot of interest in the property? That's another question that we ask, just so that gives us an idea of, how competitive the ball game might be. Has there been a lot of people? If there's been nobody looking at it, that might make them want to get rid of it or not. If there's been a ton of people, then it might be, a bidding war, and we all know what happens there. Then prices get driven up. You got to bring your best and final. So that's another question that we always ask. And like I mentioned earlier, can I get a copy of the current leases? You want to be able to see what kind of terms are in place. You're going to want to see, verify that the properties or units or property is rented, what they're receiving in terms of rent, and then what you're walking into in terms of, being the landlord. Because when it comes to leases stay with the property and the tenant. They do not go with the seller. So when that property is sold, you inherit that lease, you inherit that tenant. And so unless it is a month-to-month lease, you are locked in to whatever lease is there. So if you buy the property and they're 4 months into a 12-month lease, you're kind of stuck honoring that lease for the next, 8 months, and you're stuck with that tenant for the next 8 months. You can't just walk in and say, whoop, I'm evicting everybody, rents are going up. You can't do that when there's a fixed term lease in place. So you want to see the leases, you want to comb through them, you want to read through and get an idea of what you're walking into in terms of the property. And the last thing that I would say is you want to find out when the following things were updated. So these are those capital expenditures: the roof, the electrical, the furnace, HVAC, windows, plumbing. Now, a lot of times in a seller's disclosure, that information will be in there. So you can get some of that information whenever you ask for a seller disclosure. A lot of times when you go and view the property yourself, you'll be able to get a feel for the furnace and the HVAC. You'll be able to see if the windows are old or new and need to be replaced. You might not know about electrical and plumbing if you can't kind of see some of that stuff. So that's stuff you might need to look for from a seller's disclosure standpoint. But the roof and the furnace and the windows like that, you might be able to get a feel just by simply going and looking at the property. And again, by asking those questions, then you can get an idea of what you should be saving in terms of capital expenditures each month. So last night in the training, I talked about what capital expenditures were. I showed you a graph of, how much you could expect those things to cost over time and what you should be saving each month. So if you go in and you find out, okay, the roof's good, the windows are good, I need to get, a new hot water tank probably in the next year or so. How much should I be saving for that, in a CapEx fund so that I'm ready to buy that hot water tank in a year, right? Or that HVAC system in a couple years. So asking those questions allows you, again, this is all coming back to running a proper analysis. So these are the questions that you need to ask. These are the numbers that you need to look for when it comes to getting prepared to actually go and analyze the deal. We're not even analyzing the deal yet. This is just kind of the preparation and the due diligence ahead of time to find out what you need to know when it comes to investing, in rental property, and what you need to know to run a proper property analysis. So In the workbook, you'll find the coordinating worksheets for this training. So I give you a checklist in there where you can go through a checklist of all of the numbers and things that I went over tonight in this training. You'll also find I included a copy of another listing that I didn't show you tonight. You can go over that. There's directions to do kind of a little scavenger hunt for you to comb through that listing and start getting a feel for what you should be looking for, numbers that you should be looking for. And so you can check that out as well. Again, head on over to rentalrookie.com/challenge workbook, and you'll be able to download that. Your assignment for tonight, hopefully you did your 10-question quiz last night. I hope that you did. Your assignment for tonight is to complete the listing scavenger hunt. Looking for as much information as you can. So again, you'll see directions in there. When it comes to telling you how to go about the scavenger hunt, there's also an answer key in there as well. So then once you do it, you can kind of go over and check your answers with the answer key. So definitely, again, grab that workbook if you haven't yet. Tomorrow, we are going to be going over return on investment. So again, every day we're hyper-focusing. Yesterday, it was about getting familiar with terms. Today was about getting familiar with listings and questions you should be asking and things you should be looking for. Tomorrow, we're going to dive into really understanding this concept of return on investment. That, again, took me a long time to understand. And Thursday will actually be running analysis. So we'll kind of be putting this all together, full circle Thursday night for actually running the property analysis. So again, we're building up to that. Questions, go ahead and throw them in the comment section. I will get to those here in a minute. Travis, you asked, how do you verify liens against properties? There are a couple of ways that you can go about looking for liens. And I know, and you know, the funny thing is it's different in every state. Actually, when we used to live in Virginia, we used to like go through and handle our closings through a title agency. So depending on your state, it might depend, you know, how this works. But when we lived in Virginia, when we would go after a property and we were in the process of making offers and doing all of that, you worked with the title company, and the title company actually were the ones who went through and checked for liens. So they looked for any kind of liens that were against the property. And you know, that was kind of their job. Here in Pennsylvania, where we live now, we actually don't work with title companies. It's attorneys. So we have attorneys who actually go through and verify liens against the property. So we know ahead of time. That's something that you can find out ahead of time. You don't have to wait until you own the property and then go, oh crap, like I just bought this property and now I have this lien against it. Depending on your state, you'll want to look into that as to how that works. Like I said, here, it's just our attorneys. They do the title search to find out if there's any liens. I also know, and I have heard we have not done this, but I have heard of people always also going to like your local courthouse and tax assessment office and those sorts of places. I've heard of people being able to go there and also look that stuff up on like the public computers that they have there. We have not done that, so I can't speak, you know, firsthand of that happening, but I have heard of people doing that. So that might also be another thing for you to think about before you even get into kind of the making the offers and getting on that road to closing. You might also want to check the tax assessment office as well, especially if you're going after like a foreclosure or something like that. You know, if you're buying it like a sheriff's sale or things like that, you know, you have that risk. So I would say start there. You're not going to be able to, you know, run a title search or have an attorney maybe check into it if you're going and buying stuff at the auction, right? So I would say maybe check your local courthouse tax assessment office, and that might be a place where you can, you know, verify that stuff before you actually buy it. The home URL for the homework again, rentalrookie.com/challenge. I'll put it in there, workbook. And you can go there and download the whole workbook, and everything is in there. So I just put it all in one place. That way you can download it once and then you have it for the entire week. So you can grab that there. Any other questions, throw them in the comment section. If you're watching this at a later time, tomorrow, later tonight, middle of the night, hey, you never know, throw your comments in the comment section. I am in the group a lot during the day right now, responding to people, getting questions answered. So definitely throw those in there, and I will get those answered for you. But besides that, if I don't see any more come in, then that will be a wrap for tonight. I hope this was helpful. I hope this gave you food for thought and kind of gives you a little bit more confidence when it comes to looking at listings and analyzing listings and just kind of knowing what you need to know to even get to the analyzing point, right? Like, it's not just a flip of the switch and say, oh, wow, all of a sudden now I know how to analyze properties. You got to know what the heck to look for on listings, what questions to ask, so that you can actually run a proper analysis. Because if you don't have all of that information, the right information that you need, then running an analysis isn't really going to help you, because it's not going to give you valid information. And we kind of live and die as investors on those analyses that we run. So there's a lot of weight and a lot of, pressure that goes into running a good analysis. So the more information that you can get, verification and verify ahead of time, the better. So hopefully you see that after tonight's training. But again, throw any other comments, questions. If you like the training, if things made sense, give me a thumbs up, woohoo, in the comment section, hearts, loves. That just helps me know that everything was good for all of you. Feel free to reach out, send me messages at any time. I'm here for you. So thanks again for joining me tonight on the training, and I will see you all tomorrow.